Hey there, here we are Friday for our live video. I will put in the notes from today or the description for today where you can source your supplies. Of course, I am here doing demos for a curated nest, an Ottawa-based art supply store that I happen to be a partner in. So of course I'm going to show you how to use our products, because I buy these products because I absolutely love them and I want to share them with you. So if you are a mixed media artist, thank you for joining me, and I am happy to show you something very, in my opinion, very interesting today, because it is one of my most requested based workshops. So, hey Debbie, nice to see you here. Today I am going to talk to you a little bit about starting a large scale painting. So large scale paintings, hey Karen, I should be doing my HST right now, but instead I'm doing my demo. I'll get to it after. Hey Kathy, thanks for joining me today. I'm going to talk about the daunting large panel or canvas and how to begin it sort of effortlessly, if you will. I've noticed in the store that all the small panels are flying off the shelves, whereas the big ones seem to be the scary point for a lot of people. And I have to tell you, my first foray into large scale painting was because I actually got a gift certificate ages ago to an art supply store, and I went in and I had no idea what to buy. I didn't know what any of the art materials were. I didn't know if I liked acrylic or if I liked oils or what my medium was. Like, I was brand new, but I just knew I was thrilled at the prospect of making art. So with that, I spent my gift card and I bought a 48 by 60, so a 4-foot by 5-foot canvas and a bunch of acrylic paints. So that just goes to show you that I really had no clue what I was doing, but I just thought I'd start somewhere. So I'm going to actually show you a little bit of how I start most of my paintings, large format. So if you are thinking of tackling a big mixed media project or an acrylic painting or a background or anything, I'm going to give you the courage to do so with a few tips. So people have been asking me about my painting with fire course. So I'm just going to start with that. So the painting with fire course is that I'm teaching this year is part of a 26 artist international course on painting and encaustics. My forte, my medium, is mixed media and encaustic. So encaustic is painting with beeswax, for those of you unfamiliar. And there are so many wonderful artists in the world who teach this now. And it's, even though it's an ancient form of painting, it's well over 2,000 years old. And it is very archival. It is now making a resurgence, and because it is coming back, it's now incorporated with modern day materials, which they wouldn't have had once upon a time. So to that end, I am teaching, and I'm thrilled to be teaching once again with Painting with Fire platform, and it's a year-long journey basically into encaustic painting. So every Wednesday you'll get in your email, once you sign up, you'll get a lesson delivered into your mailbox. So, and then you have lifetime access to those courses afterwards. So you don't have to worry if you can't complete all the courses. You can just pick and choose as you wish, and they're always introduced with a little photo and a little excerpt about who the artist is and what they're teaching, so you can learn new techniques. And basically, from beginner to experts alike, there's something in Painting with Fire for everyone. So in my Painting with Fire this year, I've decided to offer a bonus. So if you go through, if you want to sign up and you want more information on it, go to my website, www.christinalovisa.com, scroll to the bottom of that page and you'll see all the information about Painting with Fire. On there is the link to sign up through my affiliate link for the entire program. But if you use my link, you're going to get my bonus. So for those of you who've been asking what that bonus is when I say it's a print, a lot of people have been thinking it's a print of my work. It's actually not. I'm going to show you right now what it is, and then if you were sitting on the fence with Painting with Fire, today might be the day you want to sign up. So it's still at the, hey Margot, how long is each class? There are that's a great question. So there are mini classes and there are what we call our main class. So each artist submits 2 classes. One is your mini, which is just like a little lesson and it's about a half an hour. And then the large class, generally from what I've seen, I haven't watched all the videos, I'm not gonna lie, but they're anywhere from like an hour to 2 hours. So it is a full course. I guess it just depends on the artist and what they've done. I'm actually in the process of having mine filmed right now, and once it's edited and done, I bet you my main is going to be about 2 hours, and my mini, I'm going to do my absolute best to not talk and keep it down to about the 45-minute mark, even though it's supposed to be 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, I just tend to ramble on. I have so much information to share with everybody. But in the Painting with Fire, this is what you're going to get. So in the lesson, my lesson for this year, my topic is one of my most requested classes ever, which is painting large. And so we are going to tackle a 36 by 36 format painting, walking you through all the steps. Now what you're actually going to get. So this is the actual original background that I made for the class. So it's so big that I can't even, just show you the whole thing in one thing. But what you're going to get is I've had this background professionally photographed and reproduced in a print. So what I'm going to do in the class is we are going to start by using the actual print in the actual size that I'm working with. So it's basically, it is this background on here, and this is what I'm offering as a bonus. My photographer and printer is going to mail this to each and every one of you after you've signed up. And then that way you can start with the same background that I'm starting with when I do my main course. Now my mini course, I don't know, I think we are allowed to divulge what we're doing at this point, but if we're not, I'm so sorry, but I did understand that we were. So my mini course is actually how to make the backgrounds. So, and my mini will come before my main course. That's funny, my main course. My mini will go before my main, which is good because it'll teach you how to do backgrounds. And then, but if you actually want to follow along and you use my affiliate link, you too will receive a copy of this print, and then you can do exactly and see exactly what I've done. All right, so that is a little bit about that. So what that is really saying at this point is that I start my large paintings one of 2 ways. So I don't always have enough time to carve out to do, a full painting, so to speak, like a large one. I don't have time to sit down in my studio and start and finish it in the same day. Also, because I paint very wet, meaning that I like lots of layers and lots of goopy things and lots of glue and lots of paint and lots of all kinds of other things, what tends to happen is these are way too wet to keep working on. So I dedicate certain days of the week in my carved out week for painting to just making backgrounds. And in that time, I try to make as many as I actually have table surface for. So right now I have about 3 table surfaces that are free. So I will probably haul out some of my blank canvases and I will just start adding to them. So one of 2 ways. One is collage, which is what you're going to see in the Painting with Fire. But today I'm going to show you when I use just paint. So because at the store we sell all different types of mediums and chalk paints, I'm going to show you essentially how I would start with a painted background. And sometimes I have an idea of what the image might be, and sometimes I don't. So I'm going to keep my texture to a minimum in case I decide later on I want to add a big image to it. If I have really heavily textured surface, it would be hard for me to collage in that image. But if you have an image, I just grabbed this image that I had. If you have an image that you want to use in this, then what I would tend to do is decide if you want your painting to be, this one is a 36 by 48, so I would have to decide if I wanted him to be, maybe down here, or if I wanted the painting to be vertically oriented, then I can put it down here. Anyway, so you kind of decide roughly where you want your image if you have an image. If you don't have an image, then just go to town and have fun. But just try to keep your texture to a minimum at this point, because it might end up that later on you decide on an image and then you can't put it down because you've got too much texture or it'll look weird. So let's start with the basics. So I have worked super hard to, first of all, let me just show you this. I didn't change today because I was in a meeting before this one. And so I am wearing a good sweater. So I am going to put on my art sleeves. So for those of you who don't own art sleeves, I highly recommend you get yourself a pair, because today where I am, it is snowing and it's cold. So I did want to wear a nice warm sweater, but I don't necessarily want to get paint all over my sweater. So I'm just going to keep my long sleeves on and I'm going to wear my art sleeves. And you can see how on a big panel, we are often dragging our arms across the paintings. And then you can see my chest is also sitting on here. My stomach is sitting on this table. That's why I'm wearing my apron, and I'm wearing my art sleeves so that I can keep that clean. So we also sell the sleeves in the store. So if you, they are of a heavy duty canvas. So if you are painting wet like I do, it's not going to leak through and wreck your sweaters anyway. So that's just a little bit about preparation. Now I have this big board. I don't work on canvas because if I want to move into lots of texture and caustic needs a rigid surface, right? So because it needs a rigid surface, I can't work with canvas, which is too pliable and too flexible. So I have to work with a birch panel board. So I'm thrilled that in the store we are now carrying really large panels, and some of them even have different depths on the side. So you can get something that looks even more significant than a regular gallery depth, which is only 1.5 inches. And we also have circular. So we have like huge round panels that are as big as 48 inches, which to me, I'm just so excited to start tackling some of these big projects. But anyway, let's get started with the big one. And what do you need? So I tend to have a few hardware stores on hand, or hardware store supplies on hand, like DAP. So this is, or drywall compound, or anything like that you might have in your house if you were, if you're doing any remodeling, or if you're doing any type of work in your house. You often have a lot of this. This is a spackling compound. So I'm going to use this spackling compound directly on here for both texture and a bit of, let me get something to scoop it out. My trowels, as you can see, are too big to fit inside the container. So I'll use a smaller one and I'll transfer it. So I'm just going to grab some. Mine's a little crumbly, it's a little dry, but that's okay. I'm just reusing old material because I don't want to buy anything new right now for that. Because these are my backgrounds, right? Now I also keep them very thin. So I'm going to show you how you can just apply this. It is a little dry. I might need to spray this with a little water to get it. It's not too bad. It's a little crumbly. But maybe instead of maybe instead of water, I might just add a bit of chalk paint. So this is just white chalk paint. I've transferred it into a big tube. And then maybe I'll add another little bit of chalk paint in another color. So whether I add water or whether I add chalk paint, basically I'm just adding a little bit of moisture. If you have new spackle compound, then you won't need to do what I'm doing, but I'm just needing to liquefy it a little bit. There we go. Now it's not as crumbly. And now I have a bit of an interesting color thing going on too. So you can see I'm just going to use a big trowel, and you guys can buy these. This one is just what they use in the drywall section at your hardware store. And you can see I can just keep applying it, smooth it out, make it as thick or as thin as I want. But I'm going to cover a lot of the surface with this. There we go. Now, just so that you can see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some on the side here, and I'm going to mix a different color into it for a bit of contrast so that you'll be able to see what's going on. So I'm going to use my Dixie Belle black, and I'm going to mix that together. Maybe I'll use a smaller one to mix it, because I want to show you how I can take this. There we go, got a nice little charcoal color going on. And I'm going to start to go through some stencils. So I have a lot of stencils, and I tend to not use them too much at this stage for anything other than pattern. So I don't care if I get the full stencil. I just want to put a little bit here and there. And because it's only through a Mylar stencil, I'm actually not adding a lot of dimension to it, which is something that I was talking to you about earlier. If I want to put an image over top of this, this isn't big and raised and chunky. This is just a thin little layer. And now you see why I'm working with the dark, is just so that you can see it. Normally I just work with a lot of the white plaster directly. And then later on, I would tend to paint it or glaze it. But for now, I'm just going to overlap my stencils. Okay, so you get an idea of that. Now I'm going to take another textured stencil, and I'm just going to go right over top. So this is how I'm using my pattern stencils. I just tend to add a lot of thin random layers rather than you know, one design. So this adds a lot of great texture. I'm lightly knocking some of it down, combining it. And grab another stencil. Actually, you know what? Since some of you were asking me about lace, I thought I'd show you this first. So buying vintage lace is really interesting for, that one's not, this one's a nice busy texture. So these doilies and things have these great lace patterns on them, but what to do with them, right? So not everybody wants to put that in their house anymore, all these lace doilies and whatever, but the pattern is really pretty and it provides a lot of texture and a lot of interesting marks. So I'm going to just go with that for now, and then I'm going to pick up some more of my plaster, and I'm going to use the big trowel, and I'm very, very light touch. I'm knocking some of it down. It's creating some little pitted areas. So you get the idea. So now I have some random texture going on in the background. And this is what I love so much about making random backgrounds. I'm just going to get all the plaster off here because it might be dry on my tools by the time we're done talking. I'll scrape off any last little bits. So of course I would cover the entire board, right? So there's no rhyme or reason at this point. It's just play. There's the joy in leaving this soggy and sopping wet and returning to it the next day when it's had a chance to dry overnight is really rewarding and really fun. So I'm going to leave that for a second, and then I'm going to show you now. Let's get into adding some paint. So the only thing I'm not going to throw at this thing today is collage, because remember I told you there's two ways I start a large painting. One is with collage and one is with water media. So chalk paints, mineral paints, the plaster like the spackling compound, Venetian plaster, anything that should I decide to move into an encaustic painting later on is going to be compatible. So I'm not going to add acrylics at this point. I'm not going to add anything that is plastic that might repel that. Inclusions would be fine. So if you wanted to throw in sand or silica or you know, like whatever you can find that you want to glitter, anything you want to put in here, glass beads, you can add inclusions when it's wet as well. But I'm going to show you now how liberally I am going to apply paint. The nozzle isn't even big enough for how much paint I want to put on this thing right now. I might have to cut the top off just a little bit. Boy, that's a tough opening. Okay, so maybe I'll just take this off for the moment and pour some paint. Remember, this is a large scale painting, right? It's 36 by 48. So I do have a big surface to cover. I'm going to use my cleaned trowel. I've taken off all the plaster bits. And I'm using a very light hand because I don't want to squish all of my texture, but yet I want it to be part of the design. So I'm going to now spread this white chalk paint, and this white chalk paint is by Colorantic. It comes in the large container, which is why I've moved it to a squeeze bottle. Actually, any of our colors that we have on Dixie Belle or in Colorantic can be ordered in a large container. So if you are planning on working large, of course use up what you have, but if you know that you're a person who needs a lot of white or whatever, or you have a specific color that you like, we are able to get in large quantities for you in anything, and we do stock some large quantities in the Colorantic of some more of the popular colors. You would just look online. But of course, like I said, anything can be custom ordered. So now I am just dragging very lightly the white paint through here. And I don't even have enough white paint. That's how much I want this to be covered. There we go. Remember, this is going to take lots of time to dry, and we're totally thrilled to do that because this is a background day for me. And like I said, the rewards of coming back to a dry background ready to rock and roll, it just feels, first of all, like I've taken out that daunting, heavy task of starting a new painting and staring at this big this big blank canvas. You could paint it black if you wanted to, but there you go. But having it already started, when you come back with it, you're able to see a lot more possibility and a lot more potential comes out of that. So almost getting it to the point where I can start adding and scratching and generally playing. I'm trying to cover most of the wood. I don't want a lot of the wood showing at this point. Because this is almost acting like a primer or a sealer for the wood. So I don't want a lot of that showing. It looks pretty, but it's a bit counterintuitive later on to have these blank areas because it just acts as another color, right? And we do need to seal it. Bare wood is not really great for collaging on and things like that because it's just far too thirsty. It's far too absorbent. So later on we would have issues with that. So you can see I've got this nice big textured surface now, right? You can see what's going on there. I've got a lot of depth, a lot of richness, a lot of texture. If I know specifically that I want to add my image, remember I could just pretend, I don't want to stick this in the wet paint, but let's say I knew I wanted it down there. And then that meant that I was going to want this lower half to be darker. I could mark off the area. Let me grab my ruler. Actually, I can't grab my ruler. So I'm just going to grab a measure, a standard measure. Let me use something. I just realized if I lay my ruler down in this, it's going to get really covered in all this plaster and paint, and I don't want that. So I'm going to hold this stencil that I have right to the end, and then I'll mark where the end of the stencil is, and then on the other side I'll come around and I'll do the same thing. And that's right there. So this is approximate. I can always change things later. But now from that point over, if it's dry, of course you can measure properly and do all that good stuff. But I just want to, have something to work with. So I'm going to take that. And now I'm going to add some darker color to the bottom. I'm almost out of black. Time for a new container. There we go. Now, should I pour this on like this and go, wow, I love it? I could actually just leave it like this. I'll turn that upside down for the moment. But instead, I'm going to show you how easy it is to add another color. I'm going to lightly drag it down from my benchmark line. It's not a measured line because I just kind of gave myself a rough idea. But now I'm going to lightly mix in the black and create a darker background for the bottom. And if I change my mind, when I come back in tomorrow and this is fully dry, if I've changed my mind and I decided that I don't want to use that image at all, it still doesn't matter. It's just dry, it's chalk paint. I can plaster over it again. I can add more paint. I can do whatever I want at that point. It is really absolutely endless. But I was talking to you before about using your stencils. So this is one great opportunity to use your stencils with texture. So you can actually just put paint through them. You can put spray paint through them. You can put the plaster compound that I was showing you, the spackling compound. You can put wax. It's a bit more challenging with wax, but maybe that's a video for another day. There we go. But use your stencils, use your product, use your materials. I hate to see good art supplies go to waste, or people get all excited about my workshops and my videos, and then they buy supplies and then they say, oh, you know what, I bought so much and I never use it. I want you to use your stuff. That's the whole point of me doing my videos, is so that I can show you how to use new materials, but that's so that you'll actually use them. So, and that to me is one of the best things about, pardon me, about background days, is that if I only have a half an hour, if I only have 15 minutes, if I spend all day making backgrounds, I now have this surface that is full of possibility once it's dry, and I haven't committed any brain power to this or whatever. I actually listen to a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of things while I'm making these backgrounds because it requires so very little of me actually having to be present to what's going on. So you can see I've got the darker color down here, and I'm going to show you. I can actually scratch into that. I can carve into that. I can change the texture. I can apply a bit, because remember, my plaster underneath is wet. So I'm going to just drag this lightly and create some more texture. This needs to be a little cleaner. I've got a lot of little bits and pieces left on it from the plaster, so I'm just going to wipe it. There we go. So very light pressure when I'm using these, because I don't want to squish all my great texture that I've got going on underneath. There we go. And my art sleeves have come to the rescue once again, as has my apron. When you're working large, you absolutely have to protect your clothes unless you plan on turning everything into a painting top, which I have done for years and then decided that it wasn't worth it. I should just buy some art sleeves. Okay, so I think that's going to be it for my background. I'm going to show you a bit of inclusion. So I have some... what are these? It's like a heavier glitter. So I'm just going to put it. This is inclusions into wet media. So I love doing this because it, you know, what sticks, sticks, what doesn't, doesn't. So it's all good. I'm just going to sprinkle that over my seam, my border. Now, a lot of that will get painted over, and I don't mind that. It's just there for now. And then sometimes, if I feel a little bit saucy, I'll add a few rice paper or tissue paper elements. So by pushing them right into the wet paint, it will act like a glue and they will stay there. If some areas don't have enough of the wet paint underneath, then when you come back to it, you can either add glue behind it and stick it down, or you can rip that part off. Like this part doesn't have enough wet stuff to really stick down. So when I come back to it when it's dry, I could rip that off, or I could add something else. I'm just going to add another one up here. This is one of our printed tissue papers. So we have printed tissue papers and printed rice papers, and a lot of them have various random backgrounds. And what's so awesome about that is that you can just collage random things in, and you don't need to worry at this point at all about pulling it together or editing, as I like to say, your paintings. You are really just being free to create. So I'm going to pick up my trowel again. I'm going to drag a little bit of that paper, or sorry, that white chalk paint over top, and that's seating my things, my images a little bit, my rice paper and my tissue papers, but it's also kind of blurring them a little bit. I don't want to press too hard because then I will absolutely bury it, but I'll see if I can hold that up so you guys can see, because I see that you really don't have a good view of that. But there you you go. You can kind of see up here where the tissue is sort of incorporated in. And then over on that corner, same thing. It's hard to see when you're working on a large scale painting. It really helps to have a videographer at your disposal so they can follow you and do things like that. Here's some more tissue, which I'm going to push a little more into the wet paint because I find it interesting. Let me put it right here. So here I know I have no chalk paint, so I'm going to push this in to the wet paint, and the top part won't stick at all because there's no paint under it. So at this point, if I know I want it collaged in, I can go ahead and I can add a little bit of glue behind it or a little bit of paint, but I think I'm going to leave it. And then I'm going to take a little bit more of my tissue and put it in other places. Put one over here. And where do we want this one? Let's put this one up here. There we go. Pushing it into to make as much contact as I can. And then napkins and other printed tissue papers, which, like, this is gift wrap tissue. And then napkins, as in napkins that you would have for your dinners and things like that. They can also be included. The one thing I try to stay a little bit clear of at the beginning is it introducing like certain colors. So when I keep it all very neutral, I can change color later. I can add color. I can add a colored image if I want, a colored photograph. I don't have to use the black and white one. But if I have no clue what I'm doing, like I'm doing here, I generally tend to stay pretty neutral because I can always add my pop colors. I can always add my interest later on with color and things like that later on. What I can't do is if I make this whole painting very, very, I don't know, blue to match, or not to match, but to complement like an orange image or something like that, then what I can't do later on very easily is change that should I change my mind about my image. So if I decide that I'm going to go with a purple image instead and I didn't want a blue background, well, now it's a little bit late because now I've got to do my background again. So little tip, if you are doing this with paint and plaster and that sort of thing, use up the colors you have, absolutely, but try to keep them as neutral as you can if you have no idea where the direction of the painting is going. It'll save you a lot of hassle later on. So that's it for today. Yeah, a little under, or so not a recap, is to tell you, explain the painting with fire, what you're going to get in that course. And it's not this, it's when you start with a collage and paint base. So my mini lesson is collage and paint backgrounds. My major lesson is going to be a large scale painting done with said background. But if you want to start with the background that I have done, then I'm sending you that as a bonus as long as you sign up through my affiliate link. All right, thanks for watching, everybody, and happy weekend, and we will reconnect. Oh, I will be here next Tuesday. That's right. We'll reconnect next Friday. So I'll see you in a week. You're welcome, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.